Today we have a special guest. But just before introducing Ilia and do the opening, I'm just gonna introduce myself. So my name is Raz Kotler. I moved to Singapore less than a year ago, working with startups and builders to look at the ecosystem of cybersecurity and do other fun stuff. And part of that, I met Michael, my friend over here. I will pass it to you.
Awesome. Yeah. So welcome to the Generalists. I'm Michael. Awesome to have you here. And we're going to dig in today and kind of, set the tone for learning more about you and what you're doing and kind of bring this back to our overall theme of being a generalist. So thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. And before we're going to start, I'm just going to set the stage and I'm going to say a few things about Ilia. So everybody's get to know him because, disclaimer, I know Ilia very well. We are very good friends. I thought it's going to be very impactful to bring someone like you that influence others. And we can do kind of false multipliers, for the other people in the community. So Ilia is a cybersecurity practitioner. He's been in a few enterprises, started as a practitioner, saw different roles, have been globally, moving to Singapore, build his own few companies, not only one, entrepreneur in different places, was able to work with the Singapore government and other people that were influencing this ecosystem. And not just that, he didn't stop, he never stopped, He said, I want to teach the next generation. So he went to a uni and he wants to have and build a syllabus or contribute to his current syllabuses to teach the next generation about cybersecurity. And it didn't stop there, because he said, now I want to contribute back to the community. So he developed webinars for free. He assisting others to connect and communicate. And I think this is what makes you a generalist, which is something that we're going to speak more about in the show.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
Again, thanks for having me here.
So first, before we're going to start everything, tell us about your story, how you got to Singapore.
The story is a lot shorter than you think. I used to have a small business back in Israel. And at some point, because of the entire environment, taxation, I don't know if anybody reached that point in life where it's just so heavy and you don't want to do that anymore. So I opened up my LinkedIn, had 2 job offers, conversations, one in the US, one in Singapore. US, they said, 10 to 11 months and maybe you'll get a visa. Singapore, they said, 2 months, you definitely get a visa. Pay is everything's the same. I said, let's check where Singapore is on a map. So took a look, looked interesting. And 2.5 months later,
have you ever been outside of Israel to that time?
Working, briefly for my business. I used to work around the Middle East as a cybersecurity instructor.
A little bit, but...
Yeah, just traveling, but not actually living. So it came as a big surprise for everybody, where I just said, guys, I got a visa and I'm leaving in a month. So thank you. Au revoir.
What year was it?
That was 2012 and a month ago.
2012 and a month ago. So 12. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so 12 years and a month.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And been here continuously since then.
Yes, been here continuously. During those enterprise days that Raz mentioned, I got to travel a lot in Asia as business development for security services. So I got to stay sometimes very prolonged times, a month and a half in different countries, training the local delivery teams on how to approach deals, on how to build deals, implement hands-on, across pretty much everything security related that we were doing back then.
You have a various amount of roles, looking at your profile, different kind of products, private sector, public sector. How has this crafted your narrative about the overall security situation, or let's say regimen today? And how is that affecting how you design the stuff you do today?
Well, listen, that's a good question. The short answer would be, and I'll expand it later. The short answer would be that today I am really all about simplicity for the end user. When you bring a security solution, and depending on the company that you work with, the end user, most of the time, should not know that there is a security solution there. Should not care. Now, again, I mean, depending on the company, because sometimes you actually want them to know that there is one. Now, where did this come from? It came from looking at a lot of different designs, working with a lot of different people. Everybody overcomplicates security. Security is not complicated. It does not need to be not your 300-page acceptable use policy that you expect your user to sit and read on their first day. Well, that's not going to happen. They're going to scroll down, just like we all do in your end user license agreements, click the tick I've read and accept. And the same thing is going to happen with all your policies, with all your security controls out there. So really today it's mostly about how do we make sure that, one, the user understands their role, and to make security as transparent as possible with a few caveats out there.
Is it getting better? This notion of that it's supposed to be so transparent that people just use it, or getting worse? I know it's $1 million question, but
it is, and
because all we read about is more and more break-ins, more and more data being stolen, more scam. But I also reckon that it's like the news. It's like because it's so available to this information to be disseminated, that part of it is maybe you're not hearing it more, or sorry, maybe it's not happening more. You're just hearing it more. So in this security thing, is it actually happening more, or is it just because news is disseminated so quickly we're just hearing about it a lot more? Like, what's your take on?
Well, of course we hear it a lot more now. Yeah. It's a hot topic. Who got ransomware? Who actually paid the ransom? Things like that. It spreads like wildfire on all the WhatsApp groups I'm on, or Telegram. The transparency that I advocate is for the end users. The end users don't care. The end user comes in, if he sees a red screen of a ransom, he doesn't know the impact. He doesn't know all the work that goes in the back end on recovering, sanitizing, making sure everything is okay, correct, RTOs, RPOs, everything is on time. The management, however,
does.
That's why they get paid the big bucks, right? They need to worry about all of those factors, all of that information. And so this is where they don't really see the transparency unless they're the users. But they do need to make the decisions. They need to make the call. They need to do things rather than the end user itself. The end user just needs to know pretty much, don't click links, don't open things you don't know, don't go to not safe for work websites.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple. And at the end, if they do, that's where our transparent security will stop them.
Got it.
Yeah. I would say also from my experience, it's not just the news that it's so open and so fast and so agile. Technology is moving so fast. And this is give actually the opportunity to have so many different types of bridges.
Yeah.
So don't forget, and I'm saying just from my end, technology is a key element, for things to expedite. Do you agree?
98% I agree. And
the other five?
Where's the other two? The other two is that it's the principles of technology that stays the same, rather than the exact technology that you're going to use. When usually people say technology, they mean a product. And correct me here if I'm wrong, if you mean a product or a type of technology.
Maybe it's
right?
been like, we've been like 10 minutes over here. I didn't say AI. AI.
Okay. Well, we hit our buzzword count. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, if we take, let's say, AI as your example, machine learning is not new. Machine learning has been around, 2 decades now. And it comes from different variations. It would come from your data mining. It would come from your databases, etc. Now, the base is all the same. How it would work, your neural networks, is not new.
Yeah.
People still don't know how they work, even 2 decades in. If something happens, nobody knows.
So they need to know.
Well, yeah, if something screws up, you need to know why it screwed up. But the principle is all the same. And it doesn't matter if you call it Claude or Sky or Siri, not an AI, but Bing, whatever, they all work the same at the end. And that's where also what I try to advocate to a lot of customers, that it doesn't matter what you choose. It doesn't matter if you choose an XDR, an MDR, an EDR, an antivirus, anti-malware. They all do the same.
It's too many
thing.
acronyms. Man.
I know,
you
right?
There are not too many people that understand what you're saying, even though you speak.
But because people go to the product to kind of talk about these things, it's allowing people to skip over the substrate. And what you're kind of saying is people need to learn the basic common practices that has nothing to do with the product around staying safe as a user or as an enterprise building things that are safe. It's not about the product per se. It's about the cultural practices and the IT practices that create, I guess, a safer ecosystem.
That's exactly what I mean. And by the way, the acronyms is going to be your job writing the notes later. I'll try and use as many acronyms as I can now. And that's exactly the thing, Michael. It doesn't matter if Acme Inc. uses monitoring from company A or company B. Their incident response is going to be the same.
Yeah.
But at the end, a lot of the decision makers lean towards a product rather than figuring out how they are going to work with a product.
Yeah.
Not specifically A or B.
Whatever the product.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is probably harder to teach. If
it's a lot harder to teach.
It's easier to do product training maybe than training around how to act or how to react to something is probably less easy for people to grasp or less interesting because there's no like hit from it. You're learning these constructs about how to stay safe or how to build safety isn't as probably exciting as, I get to use a product or I get to do Y or Z.
Yeah, and that's, for example, what I tell my students, right? You actually have to think in my courses.
Yeah.
I don't spoon feed you. There's no 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what you're going to do. Give you a problem. Figure out how to solve it.
Yeah.
Once your head is bleeding after you've been hitting it against the wall with no solution, then I'll guide you.
So we're talking about a product or how to use it, and I feel your motion, how you thinking about the end user experience. Let's make sure the user experience, the customer experience, is going to be the top priority. However, we still have the cybersecurity practices. So how we can make like a business success by focusing on the end user satisfaction and still keeping, the cybersecurity practices along the way.
It's a lot to unpack. I'm glad you told me I don't have a time limit.
I'm the one that asking the question.
Yeah.
The tough job is for you to answer.
Well, it's not a tough question to answer. You see, end users, as I mentioned, end users don't care. People want to get to their job in the morning and leave home in the evening and get paid. That's really all their worries. They're not business owners. The satisfaction at the end is of the business owners. There's always going to be an end user. Once they know there's a cybersecurity control on the workstation, whatever it might be, they're going to complain. Even if it's a fake one and it doesn't work and it's been disabled for 6 months, they're still going to complain. I know that from my time deploying cybersecurity tools. When we announced that the deal has been started and we haven't even installed a single agent, we started getting complaints.
Data loss prevention deal.
Yes, the data loss prevention. Thank you. We started getting complaints that
it's even coming.
Workstations are slow. It's your data loss prevention agent. Yeah. But we haven't even installed one. So satisfaction that's why I also say it needs to be transparent. They don't need to know it's there. Hence, satisfaction is pretty much out of the question here for any end user. Now, your stakeholders, your management, that's a different story. They need to see some kind of a metric that they're getting. Now, cybersecurity is a problem with metrics. A lot of the metrics that I see, a lot of consulting companies that I've worked with, they don't know how to set metrics. So you would see metrics like, and I think you've seen maybe on the news, JP Morgan fends off billions of attacks every single day. Well, that's a pointless metric. One, what is an attack? Is PortScan an attack? It's not an attack. Palo Alto scans my servers at least once a day, my small private cloud. At least they try. Is that a metric I'm supposed to count? No, it shouldn't be. Now, how would you also measure your cybersecurity? Your only ROI is if you stopped a successful attack. That's your only ROI. If you haven't been attacked,
Nothing to talk about.
nothing you can tell, nothing you can show. Oh, I saved theoretical $5 million for the company for an attack that didn't happen. Well, the stakeholders, the management is not going to take that. And that's where showing cybersecurity is really hard. The way I approach it with my company is mostly in cost savings and consolidation of their security practices, as well as automation.
And cost saving meaning because if you were looking at what they're doing and try to design something simpler and make it more effective, the hope is they need less product.
Yep, exactly. You need less product, or sometimes redesign the architecture, that their architecture might not properly accommodate their security controls, or they might have bottlenecks depending on where they place the security products, or they might need to change security products completely.
Is this typical? Because like I think we've all been involved in building systems. You know, a lot of people are, and this will get to one of our later questions. A lot of people are in the cloud. We don't need to mention brand names. Just keep this simple. People build in the cloud, or work at a fund, or I've been an advisor. I'll look at, let's say, a Series B, Series C start. Now they have some money. Now they have growth, and you kind of look at their system, and you're like, why do we have 7 databases? Why does we need this permutation of that? Why do we have 2 different queuing engines? You know, you can, whatever. There's just like consolidation that can be done that is just the right thing to do from the perspective of saving money, simpler system to administer, less products. Is that the same thing that happens in security?
Yeah.
Almost to a T?
It's almost to a T. Sometimes it's even, and I think we've all been through it, right? You go to an organization and you only have one person who knows the actual process to do something. Well, if that person is not there, you're bottlenecked. So we come in and we also document and train others to do those processes instead, so that you can work faster, you can achieve things faster. And it's pretty much the same in any type of system design. Whether you're going to the cloud, which you definitely need to re-architect some things, or you're on-prem and you had so many products accumulated over the year that you don't know what you have anymore.
Does this proliferation of product actually lead to more problems? Or are we safer because of it? Or is it the fixing it and kind of coming back to like root causes and creating the simplicity you talk about actually create more safety? Like, where's the trade-off?
It doesn't necessarily do any of that. More product does not mean better or worse. If you had, let's say, lots of devices that they were all vulnerable for the vulnerability we had a couple of years ago, Log4j. Well, it doesn't matter how many products you have if they're all vulnerable.
Yeah.
Then again, if you do have different products and one of them doesn't have that, well, you are safer. So that it really requires quite a deep review of what is there to actually say something beneficial about it. Right? So I can't say it's here or there or
it's more the fact that you need to look at it all and have a good understanding of it.
Yeah. At the end, if you have lots of products and nobody knows how to use it, then you have a completely different problem here.
Got it. You're going to know this one better than me. This thing that's been sitting inside the package managers, right? Yep. And just how it was just taken for granted that, well, of course there wouldn't be anything there because this is open source and this is what everybody uses to do their stuff. But the Trojan, whatever you would call it, has been sitting inside the actual core package manager. How do you discover stuff like this? Because the industry didn't even know this was happening. It was that Microsoft researcher that found it because he saw...
By stroke of luck.
Yeah, stroke of luck. He saw a small degradation in performance on the socket handler, I think it was, and just happened to be noticing that like this shouldn't take so long, and it was because something was sitting there inside of it. Yeah. But this was like industry standard thing used by experts literally every day. So when I think about this problem, and then I correlate it back to like normal people building systems, they're kind of outnumbered from how complex this stuff is. This notion of complexity, kind of back to my other question, is this actually making it all harder versus kind of peeling back the onion and saying, how do we get back to building with the basics, things that are inherently more secure and maybe easier to manage.
Regarding XZ, one of the issues was, I think it relates to a lot of different issues, right? The reason this happened was because the original maintainer had mental issues and they were pressured by these fake personas to actually assist and etc. On top of
Almost social engineering again.
Yes,
right?
it was a lot of
It's pure social engineering.
a lot of
Very
social
natural.
engineering and a lot of pressure from the community to actually update this while he's the only single maintainer, while you have Microsoft, Red Hat, you have all these companies using those packages. And this poor guy sitting there not getting a dime for all of his work. That's the first major problem that you have there, right? Open source does not
Solve that.
does not mean free. And I hope this guy changes to whatever licensed package, not for commercial distribution, unless you actually get paid. Now, on building on top of that, you had so many developers using those packages, but they never actually reviewed those packages.
They just use them.
They just use them. And that's one of the issues in open source. When you see a Docker image, you say, oh, 20,000 more people use it. I'll just download it without checking and run it.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of companies would do. Without solutions to actually sandbox it, running, and there are solutions like that.
Yeah.
Lots of solutions. It doesn't matter which one you choose. Open source as well. That would run, maintain it, and more. So it's a lot of different steps that might need to be fixed in companies before something gets approval to be built in. While companies check, software that they go and do a requisition for, that they spend $3-4 million, they don't check packages that would come with a Linux kernel with an update. That's where your issues begin, I think. It's that mindset that, yes, as you said.
just accept it.
Yep,
Yeah.
we just accept it. It's an update. We got it. Let's update and do it.
How do you think it's supposed to be different? Like from your point of view, from simplicity, or how do you think if you would have the magic stick to change it, what you would do?
I'd pay the guys. Yeah, but
I mean, they would be better compensated for their work and therefore maybe digging in more? Like what is...
Yeah, that's the first thing, because a lot of maintainers of open source, they have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
On top
It's
of
a side gig almost.
It's not even a gig because they don't get paid. It's a hobby.
Yeah.
A hobby is something you spend money on.
Just to throw in a couple pedestrian sidebars here. Social engineering, just to explain it real quick, because I think this is the biggest thing that's missed, in my opinion, on security, is literally a non-technical thing at all. And this is probably if you're in Singapore, these are the scam calls. And what we're talking about in this hack is literally it was social engineering. It's probably the root of almost some of the biggest cyber problems we see is social engineering, right? Is that a fair statement?
It is a lot.
Because it's people.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with tech. So I just want to set the stage for that,
Yeah.
right? Then on the open source thing, kind of peel back so people understand what we're talking about. A lot of times in the tech industry, but the open source things immediately has this label of goodness because it's open source. All it technically means is the source is available,
Yeah.
right? But what you're saying is these people after their day job from, maybe they're paid by Red Hat, go and put in X hours on this open source package that they're not paid for. And everybody in the combination is obviously doing some amazing work. So I'm not knocking this stuff at all. But because there's no commercial kind of responsibility there, what you're saying is sometimes things are falling through the cracks because that's actually not their main job. It's not actually a commercial product. And you just kind of expand this out, the world of literally millions probably of open source products. It creates these anomalies where, yes, open source is good, it's amazing, everybody sees it. It doesn't mean it's inherently safe.
I mean, this goes to back to the philosophical discussion, right? What is better, open source or closed source or proprietary software, which we're not going to go into. I think it is, rather than open source, it's the commercial models, as you mentioned. Open source can be commercially viable. Look at Canonical. Canonical is
Tremendous startup industry that's built on taking the open source stuff and I guess commercializing it, for lack of a better term. That's almost the playbook for what Mongo started that way. A bunch of these, HashiCorp, like a lot of people started with that. It's a business almost model per se, but it doesn't mean there isn't some cracks in the system for how it operates, right?
Yeah, it works when you have a company, right? When you have a company structure and you're expected as a company to make money.
Yeah.
However, when you have a single maintainer who started this as their own, want to do something better, they just don't see anything. And I think we all know that one person in our life that you give them a finger and they try to take the hand. And that's what the internet is.
I think that we need to change their name, by the way. They're not maintainers, they are creators.
They are creator. I mean,
creating things are not different from any other, YouTube or any other TikTok, creators. They are creating something that's not just maintaining that. They're actually creating things.
They are. I'm just talking from
I know.
GitHub terms. But yeah, the creators of the open source projects should at some point just completely change and move to, hey, this, you want to use this commercially, you pay me money.
Yeah. And then there's some incentive for them to manage it. Switching gears a little bit, explain self-hosted.
Okay.
And then we'll ask questions about it, but I think it's better to set the stage for it so people understand what it is.
Sure. So self-hosted is a small sole proprietorship that I started about 3 months ago to see if the idea is actually viable in Singapore. Now, it's a for-profit company. We'll start with that, right? Even though I do free webinars on cybersecurity and self-hosting, the idea behind self-hosting is that you take back your data. And what do I mean by taking back your data? You have so many solutions out there, or Google Photos, OneDrive, anybody who offers free storage, free, streaming services, free, whatever it might be. Never free. You pay something in return for it, and it's your information. If we take Singapore as an example, every single mom and pop shop here started offering a membership. I don't remember where I walked into. I bought like a candy bar. They asked me, do you want to sign up for a membership? And you'll get 7% off. And I'm like, it's 3 cents. So I value my data more than I value 3 cents. Yeah. So everybody wants your data.
Sure.
So they can do something about it. So they can mine more and more and more of it or sell it to others. So the idea on self-hosting is taking your data back. Stop giving your data off to Google Photos.
So what are the core components of this? There would be photos, files, email,
music, books, emails, and anything you can think of, videos, or even conference calls. All right, Zoom had the audacity to add to their terms and conditions that you join this platform, we can own your voice and video for perpetuity. I get filters. I don't read the news, but I get a lot of news filtered to me for friends, connections, and etc.
Okay.
The interesting stuff. The idea here is, if we take Google Photos as an example, is that you, on your infrastructure, using a lot of open source solutions out there, you can host those services as a replacement. And you control where does your data actually leave, go to, or what happens with it. One example for that is Image, which is spelled IMMICH. It's an open source solution which received just a money injection from a company named Futu. They pretty much bought over the brand, and the developers are going full time on the project.
I guess you could be running this on a piece of hardware in your own house if you wanted to, or you're saying people use like DigitalOcean. Like, what are some of the building blocks that you're encouraging people to do, or that are possible for people to do?
I think it's up to anything. You can host it on your MacBook. You can host it on some old PC that you haven't dusted for 6 years in the house, a mini computer that you bought for $100, or DigitalOcean, even AWS or Azure, though it's probably going to be very expensive on those services. The idea is to replace what you can for your own services, for your own managed system.
So take me to a journey. I want to be your future customer. What should I do?
Well, first I need to see any money from you. Yeah, get the checkbook out. Very simple. It's in any type of business that I run, even on the cybersecurity, my full-time day job, right, is figure out what do you actually want? What are you trying to achieve with it? It might be that, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to do anything. Then, well, staying on Google Photos is probably best for you.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to put in half a pinky of work into this. Now, if you actually are interested, then we figure out if, let's say it's a business, we understand what are your requirements, where do you want to operate, what do you need to do with the data, how do you want to secure it. It's an entire conversation of about half an hour. And then we create a diagram saying, this is what we propose. Do you want to do it or do you want us to do it for you? And we continue from there. Yeah, that's pretty much the journey, and we will handhold together the entire journey until you say, "Thank you, guys. I'm a grown up. I don't need you anymore," and we'll hand over everything to you for you to run, to manage.
Do you think you'll see more of this in the future, or is that it's getting so complicated again? And the features of Google Photos are so good, and the features of iPhotos are so good that people just don't have the wherewithal to go through this. I have a friend in Japan who's pretty crazy about it. And there was like even devices you can buy and put in your house. I forget the name of one of them. And it does email, files, photo, and just got to plug it into the Wi-Fi and go, right? It's like an appliance to solve this problem. And all that open source software was integrated on it. I think I saw another one where people were doing it with like a crypto ecosystem. Yeah. There's lots of ways to skin this cat. I get it. Do you think though that we'll see more of this in the future, or is it just getting so hard to convince people to even experiment?
Well, it's not really hard to convince. And I see this as pretty much cyclical. We had 10 years ago, we had the advent of cloud computing that everybody started. I started teaching cloud computing for Cloud Security Alliance 11 years ago. I used to teach pretty much 2 courses a month, but you can see the slowdown. You can see more conversations on self-hosting when companies start changing their terms. Reddit had a big influence when they changed their terms, and they saw an exodus of communities to their own nodes. I do see this as cyclical. Currently, we are moving to, back on premises, back to your self-hosting, with maybe just a little bit of cloud for offloading your workloads. But maybe in 10 years, we'll see another shift back to whatever is going to replace cloud.
Yeah, I've been following and I'm definitely not condoning any of their political regime, but like the Basecamp guys and stuff, how they've moved completely back to, I think, at 100% now on-prem. Yep. And they've even been going through like the cost of it. And I think he has something that's like 6 months of cloud bills, bought everything they needed and to get it set up, and the performance is back to kind of where they want it to be. Now they're going to be at like 10% of their yearly cost to maintain these things. And it's the same software they deployed in the cloud, so there's no difference to it. I reckon some startups at some size who kind of know their workload size and they know their products they use, it's a viable strategy. I mean, it's some work to do it. I see little semblance of people talking about it, but I don't see a stream of it happening yet, right?
There's no stream yet. It is going to accelerate. I mean, I'm also familiar with startups that their cloud bills are in the mid 6 figures every month. I understood their architecture, what they need to do, and yearly bill can be 5% of their yearly spend. It depends into a lot of factors. One, because their architecture is not extremely well. You need to know how to actually do it, how to design for cloud, how to design for on-premises. So there's a lot of conversations that need to happen here that just don't happen.
Yeah, and I wonder if it just goes back to like we almost breed complexity in everything, from the architecture to the product, and that it takes somebody to come in and cut through it. So Preet's one of my friends that we used to work together in AWS, and every answer for it would be like, Postgres, please tell me how this won't work, because we'd go in and see places where they had like 7 different databases. And the problem was, it wasn't that that's a bad thing per se, but that means you need people who know all about how the 7 work. You need your backup processes. It just creates these permutations of complexity.
Every day I get that look of, You okay, bro?
Yeah.
Like, why is it so hard? It shouldn't be so complex to do something. And I agree. It's pretty much something in our daily life to do something complex than to do something efficient.
We're speaking about self-hosting and is there attraction? People going to use it? Yes or no? I think you're going to be a good maintainer. No, like a creator for that space. And I'm looking at your generalist skills. How you can leverage, this type of skills in order to create a success and give like the indicators for your potential customers to move on to self-hosting methodology, let's call it that way.
Yeah, so I'll start a bit with covering what I actually did in like the 20 years that I've been working.
Yeah.
To just give a little bit of an overview what kind of skills I picked up. So I did start as a physical equipment technician, the start of my career, very specialized equipment. Moved to be an instructor for cybersecurity, went into implementation of various products, which I think are now defunct. Ran my own business where I did project management and training. Moved to an enterprise where I did a lot of implementation, a lot of product design. Moved to business development where I worked with people. Lots of sales, pre-sales, technical sales, things like that. Moved to a security architect position where I was pretty much doing mostly architecture for a lot of projects in Asia. Customer success, where I helped build a team and work with customers on how to best efficiently implement. And then moved to my business with, Lockjar, doing cybersecurity advisory, process management, process consulting, and 3 months ago, self-hosting. Now, throughout that entire time, I was also an instructor for ISC2, for Cloud Security Alliance, still am, delivering various courses. So it's a lot of skills, that I've picked up from touching the computers to actually designing systems. And there are lots of books read in between, which is pretty much where I get the knowledge, right? You read a book, you got to implement it. My last book was Keycloak, which is a single sign-on solution, identity management. So I had to do hands-on and how do I implement everything and configure and design around it. Now, how can you apply all these general skills into any type of business when, a majority of people don't have millions backing them up?
Yeah.
So you are starting as one. And as that one person, you end up being the CEO, the chief everything officer. I just finished, right before I came here, I did a delivery of a product that was sold to a customer for the self-hosting business.
Yeah.
Said it's along the way, I'll just drop it off.
Wasn't a grab. It was you.
It was me. It was personally me. I parked. I got denied entry to the parking lot 2 times because I'm on a motorcycle. And then went to the customer, got their signatures, got back home. Later, I'm going to upload it to the invoicing system, approve the orders, and start their warranty process against the distributor. So you're the chief everything officer. You need to know at least a little bit of all those skills so you can have a conversation or get to something. Now, Linux, I'm very familiar with. I've been doing it for 17 years. I think at least if I can talk to people and configure the system to them, then I already applied all those, at least half my generalist skills there. But you do need to sit and learn. And if you have nothing to do, you got to go and work and learn and not sit on your ass waiting for something to drop in your lap.
And do you think that being a generalist, even if it wasn't what you set out to do, but it's what's happened, is created this like adaptability in you to keep kind of tackling new things? Because you got what you're teaching, you're doing a couple of your businesses, probably some consulting. It's kind of like that portfolio career that maybe you didn't set out to design it that way, but that's what's happening, which is interesting and probably fun. Like, how do you keep pulling these pieces together and make sure they all come together in a way that is beneficial to you?
Well, I'll start with when I pursue something I'm passionate about.
Oh.
If I'm not going to do something I have no interest in.
Yeah.
Now, all those pieces, they don't keep accumulating, they keep replacing each other. For example, the teaching, I'm scaling this down because I want to focus more on the self-hosting part and the cybersecurity and the teaching. It's fun, I like doing it. I'm going to continue teaching just in a different setting, the one I used to do before, which is part of work.
You go into these new areas. Is it by design because you want to keep learning a new thing? Or is it because it's already a niche or a specialty for you? Because the self-helping is very different than, it's sure tech, right? I understand it's tech, but it's very different than the cybersecurity stuff.
Well, it is. I see them also complementary to each other. I always learn new things. I read a lot. My habit tracker says I need to learn an hour and a half every single day. Something. It needs to be books, videos, or what, and even typing. I'm learning speed typing so I can type better. Even that goes into the learning part. So an hour and a half.
What's your habit tracker? What do you use? Just Notepad?
I think it's called like Habits.
All right.
Awesome Habits.
Okay.
On iOS. You can find it on Sat app, which is just awesome. I do track the habits. I learn every time I go to Humble Bundle. If nobody is familiar with it, humblebundle.com. They have books. You buy like 30 books for $18. I buy those books and I sit and read them. And I actually read them. That's how I learn.
Yeah.
So if I find something I'm very interested in, well, I will incorporate it somehow into my business. Art or cooking. I have lots of cooking books as well. So I do love cooking.
Yeah.
I used to have a business around cooking. A very small one, just a test to see whether my recipes would get accepted or not.
Well, other people eat these.
Well, other people eat this, and I'm happy that I had I think a 9.6 NPS score. So satisfaction was 9.6, which I was very happy about it.
What is your report card on cybersecurity as of today, and everything you know about the industry and what you're doing? Are we improving as a society in dealing with it? Is it getting worse?
I'd like to think it's getting better, but when you look at it, I think the remote economy that we have right now contributed a lot to the destruction of value cybersecurity had.
I don't think it was intentional though, right? You just meant because now people are not in the office and they're not in lockdown environments.
Where I mean it's that you have the sites of like Upwork, TopTal, you have Fiverr, Freelancer, and etc. And what happens is that there's no proper vetting anymore of who's coming to your organization to supply services. It's all about what can I get cheaper.
Yeah.
And so
these random people that you don't know, even if the system says they're okay, are now accessing your system because they're doing some service for you.
Even the system doesn't do anything. So when I started the business, I also signed up on Upwork.
Yeah.
Nobody asked me, do you know anything about cybersecurity?
Well, it'd only be like ratings and past projects that would give you some inference, but you're right, there's not much.
There's nothing, and a lot of it is pretty much about price. And the thing is, I see that this dripped down into also the corporate world. I've had companies reach out to me for a CISO role that they expect you to also do incident response and forensic investigations, and I'd get paid more driving a cab.
You're like super security man, but check the salary.
Yeah, you're the security MacGyver there.
Yeah.
With the liability.
With the liability as well.
I had sent this article where it said like, what's the worst job right now? Being a CISO, because it's all the stress, all the problems, also the savior, but in some sense maybe not getting paid for all of that bundled into one thing. These problems are never going away in the short term, no matter how much better we get. It's a big industry, right?
It is, but I think the gig economy pretty much, my acquaintance said it best. Companies are now looking for a white tiger with a budget of a street cat. And that's what's happening today in a lot of places.
So if you were giving like the general populace one hot, useful cybersecurity tip for their life that's simple, what would it be?
Update your browser. Close your browser daily. Just close it. It updates automatically. Close it, open it, you're done.
So just so you get the latest version of it, because they're always got the patches fighting all the problems, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I tend to agree because we don't see it. Our operating systems, our browsers.
I haven't even said, but my biggest thing that drives me nuts when I run into a parent's machine or their phone is like they haven't updated. And my first inclination is that red dot that says you need to update. Click it. I can't stand it because I know that means they're behind on things that they don't even know if they're getting taken advantage of, right?
Yeah.
I know the updates aren't perfect and the errors get introduced in the updates, but probably 90% of the time you're better for staying updated. Where's the OS, the browser, or whatever, right?
Yeah, my parents are my biggest, from time-wise, biggest managed customers.
I think that's every tech person with every family. Awesome. So we have some stuff we want to do in closing, not technical related. 20-year-old Ilia, what would you be telling that person today, knowing everything you know, all the experiences you had? What nuggets of wisdom or warnings would you be telling them?
I thought about it recently. It would be go into software development, stop spending money, and save more.
Save more. Yeah.
Those are the three things. It's
Got it.
Simple.
And you weren't doing software development, you were doing hardware.
I was doing cybersecurity, but on the hardware side.
So be a software developer, save more money.
Yep. Save more, spend less.
Spend less. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then, 20-year-old me probably would also be lose weight.
That's a good one, though. That's a good one.
How do you do so many things, yeah? So many things. I think your books is the answer, but I'm not sure. How you keep your wellness, with all this craziness? Like, what's your drill, if you have one?
To be honest, till last year, my wellness was crap. I stopped drinking completely. Just went dry, no alcohol, nothing. Last 6 months, I started eating less. So I started closing my mouth and drinking more water. And over the last 5 years, you can say that I just started eating less. I do exercise once a while and breathing exercises, just walking and eating less. Eating less, I think, is the most important thing for me. Eating and drinking
just
less.
Consuming less.
Yeah,
and now drinking is none.
Drinking is none, nothing.
And is that a forever thing for you think, knowing what you're learning from it?
So start with baby steps. So 2024 is a no drinking year.
Okay, got it. I keep trying to even do dry January, and I make it by like the second week, and then I'm pathetic.
I mean, these 6 months is the longest period I haven't had a drink in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. My wife is super happy. She suddenly has alcohol to drink at home. It's not finished the day.
For her.
Yeah.
For her.
No,
It's not gone.
it's not more. It's any for her.
Yeah.
She actually gets alcohol now.
She's like, stay off it. There's more for me.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I like it, yeah.
Got it. And then tell us one thing or a couple things you're watching, reading, listening to that you really love that you would like to share with people. And it doesn't have to be educated. It could be an escapist show. It could be, we just want to, plus we discover things this way.
I'm thinking. Just
all right, no worries. Yeah.
The latest book I'm reading or rereading is probably not of interest. It's Administrating Ubuntu Servers. Exactly, right?
Now, why would you reread it?
So it's the 4th edition.
Okay, so it's
I
newly
read the
updated.
third one. It's the 4th one.
Yeah,
And maybe I'll learn something new.
got it.
It's a good risk to take.
It's time,
Yeah?
right?
Okay.
And I really don't watch much. I'll tell you an anime I watch, which is, I forgot the English name, Tsukimichi.
Anime is good.
But I watch anime. We'll add it to the show notes. But Full Moon Sonnet, I think, something like that, which is pretty much everything I have on my plate right now. 23 minutes a week of that, and the book.
Got it.
Other than that, it's work and life.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't think I've. Do you sit with your computer when you read the Ubuntu book to play with things, or it's a pure read situation?
It's a focus timer. So I use the Pomodoro timers, and it just blacks out everything but
Yep.
the book.
So you read that only.
Yeah, 25
Nice.
minutes reading, 5 minutes walking around, 25 minutes reading,
Yeah.
6 sessions a day.
Yeah, it's good. We'll get into my whole, I love the Jocko, discipline equals freedom mantra. So it sounds like that's what you're practicing.
I do because I tend to procrastinate. If I don't have something structured, I will procrastinate on something.
So this forces you to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Nice.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
for
Thanks for
having me.
sharing with stuff your journey and the stuff you're working on. Super cool.
Thank
Wonderful.
you for
Appreciate
having
it.
me. It's a pleasure, and I hope to listen to it once it's out.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah,
Raz.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
you.
for coming.
Thanks for having me.